How's it going, team? So, first and foremost, a massive welcome to the Average Jacks podcast. This podcast is going to be full of ups and downs, I imagine, like everything is. But the idea is to get into the lives of everyday people, learn a bit about them, hear their interesting stories, but mainly to see what routines and habits they use to navigate day-to-day life, what they implement, what works well for them, what they wish they could do a little bit more of, and to sort of show everyone that we're all very similar. We all pretty much do the same things, but that each of us have these own unique perspectives and unique habits and unique routines that we could potentially add into our everyday life to make us much happier and more efficient. Now, this episode today is going to be slightly different from the format going forward. It's hosted by the brilliant John Cunningham. John is a very good friend of mine. He's the owner of Built Strong Online Coaching, which is a service I've used. It's honestly the best. The coaches within the business are fantastic, some of the most knowledgeable in the game, and just brilliant people all round. If you want to check them out a bit more and see what they do, all the brilliant stuff that they do, their programs, their coaching styles, head over to social media and look for Built Strong Online Coaching, or type that in and check out their website. John's great, Tommy's great, everyone's great. Couldn't recommend them enough. But I'm going to move on to the podcast. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you for the next.
Mate, I'm very good, thank you. Very good. Just finishing coaching here. That's why I'm actually a little late to this podcast. But it's, mate, it's great to be here. It's honestly great to be here. It's a weird podcast because obviously we talked about this, and I'm excited to dive into your background a little bit more. You're going to release this on your platform, so you're the host. And then I'm going to release this on my platform, so I'm also the host. Co-host in this as well. But when we spoke off air like a few weeks ago, we were having a good chat, mate. I was having one of my meltdowns and ring you. And we just talked about, you starting a podcast and obviously your, I want to say, adventures in terms of writing a book, becoming an author, and that kind of journey there. And we talked a little bit about, what happened before that to make that a reality, because so many people, and we'll talk about this probably in the future, so many people maybe want to withdraw themselves sometimes because it's putting them in the limelight and they think they've got a really good idea, but they just don't do it yet. And you took that plunge and be like, you know what, I've got things to say. I've got plenty of experience in my life. And I'm excited to kind of dive into that and see what this is all about.
Well, nice one for obviously like doing it with me. Obviously, knowing you as long as I've known you now, and we've done a podcast on your show before, so it made like a lot of sense to just do it with you, be guided by you to start it. But yeah, definitely, I think with the book and things like that, it was sort of one of them things where it was like, for me, as like someone who isn't particularly the best at like English language, things like that, wasn't great at it at school, but love reading, always been an enthusiastic reader, like always been sort of a bucket list. It was the worst thing for me to do. The worst thing for me to start out with would be, let's write everything down and put it out to the world, like you said. But to be fair, mate, it's probably been the best and the scariest thing I've done. Like you said, you're just open to criticism, but you're also open to amazing sort of feedback and people messaging you and seeing like reviews and stuff like that of being like, this is great, thanks for doing this. This has been like really beneficial. And when I sort of went along the lines of doing it, I was like, even if I can do that for one person, that'd be pretty cool. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, one person who I don't know, or even if I do know them, has sort of spent their hard-earned money on something that I've done. So yeah, it was, it's still going. Yeah, it's still a journey and like trying to get a little bit better every day. Probably not so much with the writing now, probably more with, stuff like this, doing the podcast, which for me, in principle, although we just talked about it being a little bit, shaky, thinking about it today, but yeah, a lot more comfortable for me talking, so this felt like the natural step, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we'll get into the journey of what it was like now, because we're sitting here recording this, and your book was released how long ago? Like a couple of months ago, and from what I'm seeing, a great reception there as well.
Yeah, mate. So it was. I sort of did a bit of a soft launch, like mid-December when I'd done it, just to sort of understand the platform that I was on and how that works, and to navigate myself in that sort of capacity. And then, like, obviously getting Christmas out of the way, no one's got any money or sort of time, so to promote a product, I was a bit like, well, maybe I've picked the worst time to do this. But, you know, it was great, man. When I properly released it just after Christmas, in between sort of that phase of New Year, it went really well. I sort of did a lot of promotion on services that I'd never really used before, so like Fiverr and things like that, to sort of get it out of my circle and get it promoted to other people. So that was a bit scary to, like, you know, speak to people in like book review groups who have no sort of loyalties to me whatsoever, who could have just tore me a new arsehole. I mean, like, who is this charlatan? Who's this dickhead coming into the scene thinking, you know, he thinks he knows this? And that was sort of like the worst bit. And then when it didn't get that, which it didn't, it has had it, don't get me wrong, and that is probably something we can dive into a little bit later. But yeah, man, it was just not as bad as you think. And like, I put something on my page of a day where it was like 85% of the things you worry about don't normally happen, you know what I mean? So we just big things up in our heads, and that's sort of been liberating for me, because sort of having that, not anxiety, but that doubt of like, can I do this? And like, probably a year ago, 2 years ago, I'd have probably been like, no, you can't, don't bother, why are you bothering? But like, sort of, you know, through going through my own personal journey and, you know, trying to be more confident with doing things that I don't necessarily excel at, not that I'm like being big-headed or anything, but like I said, writing a book was definitely something that, to me, was probably the worst thing that I could have done, as like comfort zone. And like, to do that first and then sort of work back, that's been cool. So I'm like, I can do anything now. I can go on a podcast, I can put myself out there. People's words aren't really going to bother me that much. They bother you initially. I mean, I think anyone's like bullshitting if they think that, you know, no words bother me at all. I don't think that's true. I think that, you know, you've got to take the constructive elements away of things, if there is constructive elements. I know we've discussed things in the past, especially in regards to me in the last couple of weeks, when some people will just go for the throat, and yeah, just go for the throat, and then you can't really do anything with that. But if people do have criticism, you've got to be sort of mature enough and have the understanding to be like, right, well, 3 people have said X. That's up to me now to do that. So yeah, man, it's been a good journey so far.
Take us back before the book launch, obviously before the last couple of years where you went on this huge personal development kind of trajectory, or who is Jack? Because obviously your book is called Habits, Happiness and Health. And I always think when it comes to businesses, when it comes to like being an author and whatnot, there's very few of them around. It's always like a projection of themselves. So in order for you to bring out a book like this, there has to be massively invested interest in this, or like an own personal discovery journey through habits, happiness and health there, which, you know, in today's day and age, this book is definitely relevant and needed. With the rates of depression going up, the rates of kind of loneliness, I would say, really going up and whatnot. Take us back a few years and talk us through your own personal development journey and how the Jack we know today became the Jack we know today.
So I think, like, for me, when I was probably around like 17, 18, like, I'd been sort of going to the gym a few years and stuff like that. Where I'm from, sort of like an expectation to be like a big lad or a rugby lad or a sporty lad, you know. So started the gym probably like 14, with no sort of real, you know, guidance or training, just like turning up, doing my own thing. And then once I got into, I was a lifeguard for a while, so I was working in like facilities and stuff and being around gyms. And then I thought, oh well, I actually like this. This is something that I can do. So I sort of went into like gym, got my gym instructing qualifications and things like that, and really knuckled down once I sort of like learned you know, the methodology and stuff, and like the training and things like that, from maybe 17 to 19 was when I was like training my best, like feeling my best, and then like I had a bit of a rough time personally, things like that, and then I just let it get away from me. And I think experiencing them 3 years of like really putting myself first and like worrying about what I was eating, not worrying, that's the wrong word, but like looking after my nutrition, training regularly, and then letting that slip, and then going to the complete opposite. Mate, I put on, I think at 19 I was like 13 stone 10, and then within 12 to 18 months I was roughly 18 stone. So like I plummeted there, and that was just the back of a bad personal time. And for me, like, I'm a bit of a foodie, so that was like my comfort blanket. And just bad habits, mate. Just bad habits led to a sort of, at the time, sort of felt like a hole that was going to be very, very difficult to get out of. And then I met Nicola, who is my lovely fiance, and you know, at first, as anyone who knows Nick and has seen Nick's transformation, we were sort of similar in that regard. We both cared about like training and things like that, but you know, when you get comfortable in a relationship, it's easy to put them things to the side, and that's definitely what happened. So sort of like coming toward that, and then that happening, and then we both just thought, you know what, nah, we're not. Like, we're happy together, but like with how we both are and how we look and, you know, how we feel and stuff, like we could be better. And I think for me, having that sort of experience of it prior and then seeing the other end of the extreme, that was massive. Because like, I know I can feel miles better. I know I can look better, and like, not even an egotistical way, but I feel like if you're not happy with, you know, certain things, and how you look's a massive one of them, you know, because how you feel in your own skin is, you know, you have that perception that that's how people think about you, is how you feel about yourself. So I just pulled my finger at my ass. I was like, I've got to do something here. Like I've gone from playing rugby, lifting in the gym, and like I was getting out of breath going upstairs, Matt. And I was like, I've just fallen, and I know what to do. I've got the qualifications to do it. I've got the education to do it. So why am I not doing it? And then, as I said, I was sort of an avid reader, probably since 17. My mate actually got me into reading. So, which is I think an unusual thing. I think people sort of, you know, start early as readers, like from being kids, and then sort of always keep it. Now, I was like a big bedtime story boy. I wasn't the reader. I was like, I'm having the book read to me. It's like I've always had books in my life, but then probably through, you know, school and college, they weren't a massive factor. And then they came back in. And then at first I was sort of reading things about things I enjoyed, so history, you know, science things, and then I stumbled across like philosophy and sort of self-help, and I think with like philosophy and then going into like stoicism and stuff, it was like the perfect storm for me. It was like history and this 1,000-year-old wisdom that is completely relevant to like today. And then that was it. That got me hooked into like reading more, learning more, listening podcasts, you know, watching things, and it was a massive crutch for me to be like, these resources are here, these people have done that, and that's what inspired me, mate, to do this and sort of go through the journey that I went through of being, you know, pretty miserable, which I've no crux in saying, and then, you know, changing that. And that's obviously how I met you when we went to the gym that you was a coach at, and then, you know, you coached me for a long time and stuff. So yeah, and that was sort of the turning point. And you know, I'm not perfect. I've dropped in and out over the last couple of years. I think it's cyclical. I think you go through cycles of, you know, motivation and discipline with these sort of things. But the journey was sort of a long one. I mean, like, again, I've no sort of qualms with saying this. Like, from I think 17, 18, I went on antidepressants, and I was like, nah, it was just it was just sort of a tick box. When I went to sort of like see someone for like help and reaching out, I just felt shit on them, mate. I felt like a zombie. I was like, this isn't me. I've got to do something else to make me feel better, if that makes sense. So sort of like navigating myself through, you know, formative years, assessing the people I was around, assessing the things I was doing, and sort of having that maturity to move away and sort of take myself out of them situations, and reading and like literature and podcasts and stuff. But probably the reason why I am where I am today, and again, nowhere close to perfect, but I'd have been on a much different path in life and a much different place. I'd have just carried on going into that sort of self-destruction is probably a big word, but it was definitely going that way. It was sort of, it was on the verge of uncontrollable. It was just like, this is just the habit now to, you know, drink 3 litres of full sugar pop as well as consume probably 4,000 calories of food a day, because what else can I do? I'll just sit on my ass and play games and do this. And yeah, I got comfortable being comfortable. I know it's a cliche saying like, get comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's true. I think you need to like push yourself out of your comfort zone to see what you're made of.
It takes an awful lot of self-reflection and self-awareness to realise you're in a place where you don't like, realise you're going down a path that you don't want to go down. I'm sure you mentioned something earlier where you said, I had the qualifications, I knew how to turn it around, but she went down that path. There's a lot of people who might be in that situation where they actually know, all right, I know I have to clean up my diet a little bit. I know I should get out to bed on time. I know I should, do some exercise. Can you remember what the catalyst was, or the point where you were like, no, I'm actually going to change. I know what I want to do. I'm going to do it. Because there's probably a lot of people in that situation where they continue down that bad path. They continue down those poor habits, knowing they could change, but they just don't. There's something stopping them there. So how can someone listen to this, I don't know, maybe use something that you did, or just kind of reflect on what you did to actually do that initial step, that initial change?
I think that's a great question. And like, just sort of piecing it over in my head now, there probably isn't sort of a eureka moment. There probably isn't a moment where I can look back and be like, that was it, that was the light bulb. Excuse me. But I think a massive one for me was sort of my environment. And I think when Nicola and me sort of had that realisation of like, I think it was a photo. I think we'd been on holiday and like we'd had photos together, and like we was like, is that us? And like Nick probably won't mind me saying it, she was a bit like upset about it, and I was like, we need it's only in our hands. No one else is going to do it for us. We can piss and moan about it. Full credit to Nick. She was probably the one who lit the fire. To be fair, she was the one. She's super determined, and probably having that environment of her wanting to be in that situation as well and be better and become a better version of herself, essentially fired me up to do it as well. And I think, like, you know what, now speaking about it, I can think of a few different like times where it was probably a bit, hard hitting to realise of where you've come. But I remember that I went back playing rugby, and like I play like second row and centre, so I'm not one of the big boys. I'm not like one of the props in the middle, you know what I mean? I'm like not the small one, but somewhere in between. And I remember getting changed in the changing rooms, and one of the lads was like, fuck me, you've only been injured for like 6 months. And like at the time I was like, what does he mean? Like, what does he mean? And then like in hindsight, probably like 3 months later, I just had a random epiphany one day that I was like, what he means, because I've put on probably like 1.5 stone or like 2 stone of like, not through exercise, just through being in that circle. And like there's little things. I think it was like an amalgamation of different things. Like I said, there wasn't an exact eureka, but I think the environment was probably a massive one, and people sort of pointing it out, people that you're close to, people that you have respect for. And I think it sounds awful, mate, but I was probably a bit embarrassed Do you know what I mean? Because I'd been at like in decent shape. I wasn't going to like, Olympia or anything like that, but like I was in good nick. And then people see that. I mean, you have this thing, you know what I mean? Like, you look in the mirror every day and you probably don't notice the change in yourself because you're seeing them small changes happen. But when you've not seen someone for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, you can see that change in someone because you have that mental image of what they was like last time you saw them. So I think, yeah, probably an accumulation of them different things, like people not calling me out like directly, but saying it. And then my environment was probably the biggest one. I was in an environment where the closest person to me wanted to do the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned something there that there wasn't a eureka moment, and I don't want to kind of brush over that because I think a lot of people go through life waiting for a eureka moment, whether it's like, building a business and you're waiting for that eureka. Oh, suddenly we're gonna make millions. You go to that fat loss diet and you're like, all right, eureka moment. This is the thing that's going to help me do that, or pack on muscle or get stronger. And like you said, it's just a compound effect of just small habits done over time, which builds up to where people see the result and be like, what did you do? It's like, well, I did these for the last 1,000 days, basically for the last 3 years. And it's built up to where I am today and what I'm doing. And often there's not, well, at least in my experience, there's not really times where there's that eureka moment in definitely in my life. And I can't look back and be like, it was this moment. It is just like day after day after day of doing the exact same thing every single day. And whether that's, lifting weights or, putting podcast episodes out or anything like that. I mean, you speak off air all the time and just like, it will just pay off one day. Whether you're talking about fat loss, muscle gain, business, anything like that, just keep on doing the right things every single day and it will happen. And yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that in the past, to be like, oh, surely there's a eureka moment. Surely this is going to happen. And I think a lot of people sometimes sit back and wait for that eureka moment when, I mean, in my eyes, just got to grab it by the scruff of the neck and do the basic habits every single day. It doesn't have to be massive, but it has to be something gearing up to where you want to be. And you mentioned a great point there. Well, it's all great turning up every single day, but if there's no aim to where you want to go as well, that's the important part. Like you mentioned self before, you had a little bit of self-reflection and you realized the environment you're in wasn't great, and you wanted to change. So you obviously reflected with your partner, Nick, and thought, you know what, we can make this change happen. This is the goal we want to work towards. Now let's put that in place and try and get there.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I think you sort of took the words out of my mouth then when you mentioned compounding. So like, compounding wasn't something I was familiar with until I started reading about like finances and like money, because that's a massive factor of that sort of thing. Something else that I'm like fairly interested in. But yeah, I think we're, again, not to get like too philosophical or anything, but like I think we're in sort of a generation and a society that we've got everything at our fingertips immediately. You can order something and get it the same day, and like I think there's sort of that expectation now that should happen with everything in our lives. But like, again, going back to reading, these philosophers from thousands and hundreds of years ago, it's all about, like patience and discipline, but also having structure, having something, a goal to aim for, and enjoying it. Like, I love Goggins, man. I think Goggins is great, do you know what I mean? But not many people can do that. I was listening to a podcast the other day, it might have been Chris Williamson, and they were talking about it. And like, you have to be a particular person where you can get up every day and do something you detest every day. Now, there's elements of that where, I remember doing a program with you, and you have to do a 20 rep back squat once a week. Now, that wasn't my favourite thing to do, but once a week I could turn up and do it. I could psych myself up to do it. But like, if I was doing that every day, I'd be like, whoa, I'm gonna gas here. But like, it wasn't. There was things I was enjoying towards it that was keeping me in that cycle. And I think, again, we're sort of, you've got these narratives of like, everything you should do should be difficult, which to a degree is correct. But like, even if you hate it, you should turn up and do it. And I don't think most people are cut out for that. I'm not cut out for that. Definitely not. I like doing difficult things and I like pushing myself out my comfort zone, but I also like doing things I enjoy. I also like doing things that, are a sort of low gear, and like you can just turn up and do them, and you know, like a bro sesh. Everyone loves a bro sesh, you know what I mean? You just turn up and just throw some weights around and get a pump. But yeah, I sort of gone off topic a bit, but like I think people just see it with sort of what they're going for is like, you've done that, so why can't I do that? But like, especially being like a trainer myself and training people, what you see is like first 5 weeks usually is like, I love it, this is great, I can see these newbie gains and these immediate gains, the weight's dropping off, and then people hit this wall where, you know, it's not that easy anymore. Doesn't mean it's shit for you and you're not enjoying it, but like, we're definitely a creature that is like obviously rewarded by dopamine and like getting things like, oh my god, I've done this, I've achieved this. So when like I always saw with people, and myself probably at the beginning, was like, if the scale wasn't going down or the weights wasn't going up, I was like, why am I doing it? I just become disheartened. But you have to fight through that wall, you have to keep pushing through for sort of, you know, like I said, turn up for 1,000 days doing the same thing, and just eventually letting them compound and build up 1% every day. I mean, it's cliche again, like if you're 1% better than yesterday, I think Jordan Peterson says it, but that's massive, mate. Like I said, if you compound that 1% every day, it's like 365% increase over the year. If someone said that to you, it's like, all right, here's 100 quid and I'll give you a 365% increase, you'd be like, yes mate, yes thank you. You're like, all you have to do is wait 365 days for it. You'd be like, yeah, sound, I'll take that. But again, I think we're sort of a bit impatient, and also mixed messages from what we want to do. I think like sometimes when I first started, you'd sort of look at people like, you know, Goggins, who, don't get me wrong, are incredibly motivational, have the players and things like that, but 18 stone me didn't have the mindset that David Goggins had to go out, you know, and run on fractured legs and do things like that. But I did need that motivation to start, but then I needed to find what I could be disciplined in to continue. And I think that's different. I think that's where motivation and discipline sort of differentiate, if that makes sense, or I'm just waffling.
No, sounds good, mate. I mean, we're getting to a point now where we're talking about, all right, the consistency is the thing that matters as well, but so too the direction. And obviously knowing where you're going to go and having that trajectory of like, I want to go in here in life. Now, some people might listen to that and be like, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what my direction is. I know I want to be in a better place, but I just don't know what I'm doing. But from my point of view, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this before we dive into the book, is as long as you're doing something positive, you might find the path that you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, get up and, you know, eat a better diet, get some sleep, get to bed on time, you know, assess your environment and hang around people that you want to hang around with that inspire you. There's a nice little term. Is that person a drain or is that person a fountain? And you don't want to be hanging around drains all day because they suck the life out of you. But you want to hang around fountains, people who you get inspired to talk to. You get off the phone with someone and be like, oh, I should do this with my business. I should do that. These are great people to hang around with. Assess your circle, assess your environment and realize, all right, can I put myself in a better environment? Now, often people can't, and that's totally cool because then now in these day and age, we've got podcasts, we've got social groups and whatnot where we can actually be a part of that and have that. You know, you can hang around with your Jordan Petersons, your Jocko Willings, all them type of people because, you know, everyone's got an iPhone or everyone's got an Android these days. So you can download their podcast and listen to hours of their thoughts, how they cope with things and whatnot. And that's how you can surround yourself with good people. So finding a direction is tough, but assessing your life and thinking like, you know what, if I don't know my direction yet, can I do something positive with what I've got now? And maybe down the line, you know, I've done a year's worth of exercise, my circle's really improved. I'm mentally in a really nice place. I get to bed on time and whatnot. Then maybe something, you know, not that eureka moment, but something unfolds after that consistency of doing it for a year to be like, you know what? I'm going to put my experience in a book and I'm going to write this book and deliver it to the world. But it wasn't a eureka moment. It was a years of just doing the right things, the right habits over time, accumulating knowledge, and getting the right circle to deliver a book to the world. And that's a smooth little segue to dive into how that happened to you, mate. And obviously it's a bit, I mean, I don't know, you're the only author I know. There's not many of them. Do you know what I mean? And like to say out loud, I'm an author in a book, of a book is outstanding. It really is, because, you know, books have been around for a long, long time. And to say, you know, you've got your name in the front of one, and now you can buy it, you can actually get it in physical. And obviously when it came out, I live in Canada now, I ordered one, and when it delivered, I was like, Jesus, it's happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's really, really impressive feat to be able to become an author and do that. So we'll dive into, not the release just yet, but in terms of making the book. Because I remember one time we were catching up on the phone, and you were like, by the way, I've been working on this. I'm going to release it soon. And it must have been months and months and months of actually hard work underneath the belt before you even got to that point. So let's take it back to day one, where you didn't tell anyone. You might have told Nick, all right, I'm gonna put pen to paper here. I'm going to jot down some notes, or put an outline together of what I'm going to do.
So yeah, man, I mean, I was like, I can sort of get down rabbit holes and things like that, and I just came across this guy who'd done this course and sort of was able to publish his own book. I was like, that's cool. I was like, that's something I've always wanted to do, but like, Waterstones aren't gonna, you know, like, take me as first release, you know what I mean? They're not gonna like rock up one day and be like, here you go, Penguins on the blower, mate, you've got yourself a free book deal. So like, I was like, well, how did he do this? So I looked into it a little bit, found this course, and this course sort of, because I'm published through Amazon, which is like, they have their own program. It's called KDP, so it's just for self-published authors. It gives anybody the opportunity to become an author, which, you know, is an incredible platform, especially for someone like myself. Obviously, I've mentioned it before, not the most confident, so to go away and sort of have that opportunity to do that is brilliant. And I did this course, learned the basics, you know, how to, you know, start a book, how to research a book, make sure it's something that, you know, like, I did this because I have a passion for it, but I also did it as well because it's something that, you know, one day, maybe, if I'm lucky enough, this could be, you know, my job, this could be my business, to, you know, have a podcast, release books, do that sort of thing, have a community, you know, that listen to me, which would be not even in like a narcissistic way, it'd be a pretty cool thing to do. So going away and then sort of doing that, it was sort of like, bless you, it was sort of like a bit overwhelming at first, because like, I bought the course, got on the course, and I was like, shit, I've spent this money, so I better actually, you know, follow through with this now. And then like, probably started it in like March 23, and it was like, you can rather do this, or you can rather like go away and write something you're interested in, you care about, you have a passion for. And immediately I was like, well, it'd be like fitness, well-being, health, and it was like, go away and come up with your title. And I was like, it was like, it was already there in my head somehow, that I already had this. And I sort of went away and did the research and looking to see it had already been done, you know, because there isn't many authors, like you said, so it is a super impressive thing that I've done it. Like, sometimes it feels a bit mad that I have actually gone out and done this, but there's a lot of books out there, as you said. So it was sort of learning how to navigate them waters, like, you know, like copyright, the boring stuff, making sure that, you know, there wasn't titles of the same. And then once I had it, it sort of gave me the structure of how to do your first book and what that should look like and how to do it. And as I mentioned, I'm not a super confident writer, but I definitely had a premise of all the experience that I'd had from reading and what I liked as a consumer. And I think that was important for me. I think that, I know we've spoke about it off air a few times, that like, I've read books, they've been mammoth, they've been big books, and you're like, what you've just said in 5 pages could have just summed it up instead of doing it in 90 pages. And again, like, going back to what I said about people being impatient in today's like society, I'm one of them people. I'm slightly impatient. I like to get things done. I like to use my time efficiently. I'm like, you know, Pareto's principle, work smart, not hard. So when you throw a 600-page book in front of me, I'm also stubborn as well. Once I start it, I'll probably finish it. So it's like, how can I write a book what I'd enjoy, but also give people sort of the information that I would want as well. So that's where the book idea came from. It was sort of fluff-free, which is what I, promoted it as. Insights to all these things we sort of covered, the important things, like, again, it's my sort of, not opinion, but for me, it's from my journey, and it's the things that I used to help me become a better version of myself, make myself happier, make myself healthier through habits. And that's why, the title is what it is. It was sort of the crutch for me was like, I've got all this information now, I've sort of gone away, I know I want to do it, I can start writing it, which I did. It didn't go well the first few times, you know what I mean? And then going further into this course, maybe 4 or 5 months in, I sort of hit that natural, maybe I should just put it down and not bother with it anymore. The self-doubt came creeping in. And then literally, like, maybe a bit of a eureka moment, but not like, it might sound a bit of an hypocrite, but with this particularly, like, the next lesson was like, there's these services that you can do, and you can go and speak to, writers, professional writers, and sort of let them help you. And that was massive for me. That was massive, like, to sort of work with like an editor and things like that, and someone who could help me get my ideas onto paper, and sort of like be like, this isn't great, this isn't so great, this is good, and this is sort of the structure, and give me their insights. It was just a whole new world, mate. It was just something that I'd never ever realised was possible, and that's sort of how it come. And it was about, like I said, it was December. I mean, I probably got the book done, the final edit and stuff, like early December, and then it was sort of like, make the cover, do that, get it on Amazon, and go. So once I'd got that final copy, and I had a few friends like proof it and stuff, I was like, well, we're here now. The only factor that is stopping me actually doing it is me pressing this button. So it's rather take the leap, put yourself out there to be subject to people's opinions and, everything else, or just be a coward and not do it. And just me being me, I was like, I'm gonna have to do it. Why not? Why waste all that hard work? Why waste nearly 8 months of learning how to do it, researching how to do it, paying for people to help, professionals to help and stuff. And like, I'm not going to come on here and be like, I've done all that myself, because I've done the majority of it myself, but I've obviously had to reach out to people and be like, I'm not very good at this, you're better at this, you provide a service, please help me. Here's the exchange. And I think that what I've tried to do is be transparent, and sort of be like, this is me, this is my sort of my journey. Because the idea of the podcast, that's why it's called Average Jacks, is because it's meant to be everyday people, and be like, sort of give us a realisation that we're all very similar. Everything we do, we all, we're tribalistic creatures. We're normally like thinking the same things, but everyone has these little trinkets of information and these golden nuggets. And that was just me trying to, hopefully give someone a golden nugget, to give them that, not like maybe eureka moment or one of them little compounding moments in life, to be like, you know what, shit, maybe I should do this, or maybe I can do this to become a better version of myself. Or for just people who, want to flick through something and like refresh. It's sort of like, it's there for everyone, and that's why I did it. It was sort of any level, any person, and it's not full of waffle, even though I'm waffling to you now, but like it's a much condensed version, and people can get through it in a day, 2 days if they wanted to, or they can take it to the toilet with them and read little incremental sections, because that's what I love, little incremental sections where I can be like, right, 2 more of them, and I can put it down and go to bed. That was probably the motivation, and also what led me from the course of learning how to do it to create it.
Before we get into the final hurdle and self-doubt before pressing that button to release it to the world, you mentioned earlier where, in the first couple of weeks people are motivated, and that no doubt happened to you. Inspiration's high, motivation's high. We just booked a course. Right, we'll learn this course. And then you hit that low point where we're like, is it worth it? Should I put it down? it's hard to kind of maintain these habits of writing every day and going over the course and, coming up with this book and whatnot. I can draw parallels to exercise and a new training program where the first few weeks people are inspired, they're motivated, they stick to it. And after a few weeks, maybe a month or so, 2 months, are like, this is pretty hard, this, and I know, am I seeing the benefit? I thought I'd make a book by now. I thought I'd lose a couple of kilos by now and whatnot. Talk us through that little bit there with that first lull where you're like, who am I really to write a book? Why would I do this?
So yeah, like a great question, mate. And imposter syndrome is something that we've spoken about before on your podcast and that, and it definitely hit me hard with this. And I think the first lull point was like maybe about 4 months in. I was super motivated because it was like a dream to do this, and I was like, this is cool. But what I found is that I'm quite people who will be listening to this are like, you're chatting absolute bollocks, but I am quite a reserved person with things that I'm doing. I'm a very sort of out there person generally. Like, I'm not a shy person or anything like that, but with sort of what I'm doing, and like, I like to keep things on the back burner until they're sort of there. And that was just, looking back, stupid of me, because I didn't have any accountability. I didn't actually tell Nick until probably 3-4 months in, when I was starting to get to that lull. And she was like, what are you working on all the time? I was like, oh, well, like this. And then that felt good. I was like, oh, I've told someone now. Someone might ask me again in like 3 weeks and be like, how's your book getting on? So I just started telling more people that I was like yourself, like, oh, I'm just doing this. This is, that. And for me, accountability is a massive thing, because I'd like to think I'm maybe someone that sticks to what I say. Maybe not all the time, again, not always perfect, but I definitely put it out into the world when I was feeling down about it, because I knew that was sort of my motivator and sort of the way to get it back in. So I didn't want to feel like people were going to be, oh, this guy's just full of shit. Here he goes again with another thing or another thing, and like you'll know. But when like I went for the fire service, and that's a big ordeal in my life, and found out that I couldn't go in 5 days before starting and stuff like that, and telling everybody that, oh, I'm going to be a firefighter, and then like the crippling thing of like 5 days before being told you couldn't do it. Probably one of the more embarrassing, like, and it's not embarrassing because I couldn't help it, but like that was probably one of the lowest I've been since being at my low point prior to getting on this journey. And I was like, why does that feel so shit? Why does it feel so bad that this has been sort of taken away from me? And sort of reflecting on that and looking back on it, and when I finally like pulled my big boy pants up and got out of my self-pity phase, I was like, it was embarrassing because I told everybody. I'd actually give my job up to do it. And that I'd been like, yeah, I'm going to be a firefighter, man. How cool is that? And then the actual crushing realisation of me like, no, you're not. Sorry, never. And I was like, oh, shit. That feels terrible. And obviously it felt terrible because of, the fact that there was consequences financially, like things like that in my job and my home and things. But like the real reason why it hurt so much was like, I've told people I'm doing this. I know people are going to be like, fucking full of shit, this guy. And that's what bothered me, mate. That's what's that. And I think that happening to me has sort of been like something I can tap into now. There's like a massive catalyst of being like, if I tell people I'm going to do it, no, I'm not going to be that guy again. That's like, fucking Fireman Sammy has done it again. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's my motivator. I've probably never said that out loud, but that's like what drives me. I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen again. So I'm going to tell people. I'm going to try my best to do it. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does, and that's really insightful to hear that, because often you hear, maybe it's kind of projecting a little bit, where, oh no, I don't let anything, influence me. It's all coming from me and whatnot. But telling people out loud, all right, I'm going to do this, and then not delivering on that. I mean, to be fair, not delivering on that was for unforeseen circumstances which you could do absolutely nothing about, and that was the reason. But to go through that, I'd be like, well, I've actually said I was going to do this and I didn't do that. So to me, that was embarrassing. It's not embarrassing, but to me, that was embarrassing. I'm now going to say, all right, this is the best. I'm going to try my best to get this done and whatnot. And to be fair, people are motivated by different things, and you've obviously got this massive internal drive to deliver great work and deliver it to the masses and whatnot. And it was really, really interesting to hear about that self-doubt that came in, or that imposter syndrome that came in during that phase, and, you know, telling people to get that accountability there, but not announcing it almost, where, all right, I've got it for accountability, which is going to help me get on this journey, but I'm not going to announce it to the world just yet. It's and yet that still imposter syndrome came in. I'm sure people listening to this will draw things out and be like, oh, that's me in this instance, that's me in that instance. I mean, I mean, just to reflect on myself, I didn't realize I had imposter syndrome until I was like, 100 and something episodes deep into the podcast. And I was almost like, oh, well, these big time fitness people aren't going to speak to me because what have I got to say? And I didn't even realize that was imposter syndrome. So I was kind of happy to, you know, interview people that I knew fairly well, who I know who would say yes and whatnot, to then putting these messages out to people who are like, I mean, we interviewed Sam Spinelli, who's got like 500k followers on Instagram and is like one of the world's best at what he does in athletic therapies. He emailed back, he was like, I'd love to be on. And there was a weight of like, okay, is this a thing? Is this, am I a podcaster now? Is this something I can do? Did you have that with your book, where, I know we're zooming ahead a little bit, where you released it to the world and you got some positive feedback and you were like, hold on, have I done it? It's like, have I released my first book? Is it good? I'm getting this podcast. Let's kind of cross that bridge of pressing that button to say, all right, I'm here, world. And that first month or so of people buying a book and leaving your first kind of reviews.
Mate, I mean, it was quite, not late on, it was probably like a few weeks in. Definitely a few weeks in. It wasn't any earlier than maybe like 3 weeks, a month or something like that. But I found myself every day, I was like, how many orders have I have? Where are the orders? Because you can see, like, it's a cool dashboard, like, where you can see where people have, you know, purchased your stuff from. But then, like, the big one was like, I got a 5-star review from America, and my head rolled off, man. Just fell off my shoulders. I was like, oh my God. I was like, Nick, go look at a 10-story house we've made it. This is us. Like, and like, it just shot through the roof. I was like, we've done it. We've done it. I was like, yes, this is what everything I was looking for. And I calmed down a little bit, and then I was like, but yeah, it was so gratifying, like, to have it, that, like, it just blew my mind up. I was like, oh my God, some random person in America has read my book, this little old northern boy from Wigan, who sounds like he can't string a sentence together most of the time, and, like, wrote a really nice thing about it. You know what I mean? Like, it was lovely. And, like, and then another one came, and then another one came. And then I think now I've got something like 90 reviews across the globe on the book. But, like, you'll know, and, like, this is what this imposter syndrome does to you. And I think, from my own, like, personal experience of it, is that you get used to that, and then when that 1-star one comes in, Matt, that's when it all comes hurtling back down. That's when, like, the stone falls back on the head. And, like, when I got, like, the first bad one, because it was pretty bad, but when I got it, I was like, "Whoa, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for." I always knew that little seed in your head's like, got you. But I was ignoring the 89 other ones that were all people that, you know, some were friends and family, but friends and family were messaging me like, "Well done, Matt. Proud of you. This is really good." And then there was complete strangers. The majority now are probably complete strangers who have reviewed it and said nice things. You know what I mean? But again, that imposter syndrome, when that one bad one come through, I just completely disregarded all of that and was like, got caught out. And I had like a rough few days about it. And then I was like, what are you doing? Like, think about it. Think about everything you've ever read and done like that, and look at the actual percentage of like what you're doing, and like these people who you're obviously benefiting. I mean, I think I've had something like 700 downloads now, and I've had one bad one in that. And like, you know, when you take that, when you step out of yourself, which I think it's important to do, I think you have to step away from your shit sometimes. And that was so refreshing, mate. And I was like, stop being an idiot. Stop being an idiot and letting this imposter syndrome creep back in when you're actually doing something what is beneficial to people and something you've always wanted to do. I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I just wanted to show, like, you know, the full circle of like that first realization was probably one of the highest highs I've had in ages. But then you sort of become desensitized to that, and then if you do suffer from imposter syndrome, like, you're just waiting for that one, like, you're a charlatan, and then that'll crush you. And then that shows my personal journey. I think that I didn't give up. I didn't quit at that point. I carried on, and I got another 5-star review the other day. And that's not me being like, well, it is, I'm flexing a little bit, but it's not me being like, you know, I'm brilliant. But it's the yin and the yang of things. It's like someone isn't going to like what you do. Someone won't like you. Someone won't like the product you release. Someone won't like the training method you've done. If there becomes a repetitive sort of theme as to why that's happening, well, you've got to be mature enough to go away and fix that. But if it's absolute bullshit, you've got to have the maturity to realise that as well. And I think that's sort of me, where I can sort of disconnect from myself and realise that I'm on a journey and that I am growing up, you know, like, I'm growing up from 27, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm still developing and I'm still learning, and this is why I want to do this podcast, you know, because I want to speak to people like yourself and people who, you know, put themselves in these uncomfortable situations and learn how, you know, they navigate it differently to myself, and they're golden nuggets of information that I've probably gone, wow, why have I never thought of that? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's sort of where what kept me in. The highest high kept me in of getting that first gratification, and then the lowest low sort of kept me in again. So if that, I know it's a bit of a tangent where I was at. Well, like I said, I wanted to go full circle and sort of show that even with, you know, the first positive, there will definitely be a first negative as well. And I think you've got to be able to handle that too.
Many people will be listening to this and think, you know what, that's all well and good, but that negative review, that one comment or someone reaching out there, and to a lot of people, and myself included and whatnot, obviously yourself, it does take the wind out your sails. It does crush you for a little bit. Like, you've put your heart and soul into something, and someone gives that negative review. It's like, oh, this has got me down here. But I mean, one of my favorite probably traits in people is resilience, where they can just keep going regardless of what the outcome is. They just keep going through hardships. They just keep going. I find that I really like that trait in people, and it takes a certain amount of resilience to even have one negative comment. I mean, when we talk about absolute percentages, you know, you got what, 90 odd reviews, 5-star, and 1-star. Do you know what I mean? That's like, percentage wise, that's what, 1.2%. Now you take 1.2% away from 100. If someone gave me an exam and went, all right, John, you got like 98% on that, I'd be like,
I am Einstein reborn.
That's a great day. That wouldn't even bat an eyelid. I didn't get those last 1%. But then, because it's more personal, when someone writes something, it's like, oh, I'm going to ignore the nearly 100 great reviews and focus on this negative one. But I think, I mean, it's an old-fashioned term, develop thick skin. And I think along a journey where you are putting yourself out there, you do have to develop thick skin. And as you grow, you know, become an author, release multiple books, your audience grows, it's inevitable that that one bad review will turn into 2 bad reviews, will turn into 3 bad reviews, but that 95-star reviews will turn into 100, turn into 200, turn into 1,000 5-star reviews. The percentages will be exactly the same, basically. 1% bad review, but it's magnified because the absolute numbers are a little bit higher. Now, this happens as you get bigger and bigger through life and more people know you, you come across more people. Like you said before, at some point, someone will not like you or the service you do. And it's having that resilience to be like, I'm still going to go because it's fulfilling for me. I know I'm serving an audience what I want to do. And I'm not going to let one bad review kind of take me and derail me and kind of pull myself back down. There's a term called tall poppy syndrome where, the tall poppies get cut down because they're standing out too much. And people like to cut down people. I mean, we don't have to get into details here, but one of your bad reviews was from some anonymous person who didn't put any of the information. It was kind of like a blank account, 1-star review, didn't even buy the book. And it's these people sometimes that kind of tear you down, and it's not a reflection on the quality of work that you do, but often it's a reflection on them and be like, I'm just going to tear this person down because maybe they're doing something that I want to do and I haven't accomplished this yet. So I'm just going to tear them down anyway because it makes me feel better.
Right. And like, obviously, I think using my example as the example, because I can sort of speak from my own personal sort of experience from it, is that now being in this environment and like putting myself out there, like when I do content or like reels or TikToks or anything like that, and I'm speaking, regardless of how confident I am as a person, I'm fully aware that someone could comment and be like, who's this guy? And then you worry then that like as soon as one person says it, what if 2 people say it, and then what if 3 people say it? But again, a friend said it to me. They were like, imagine if you put 700 people in an arena and went, all these people have rather bought your training program, bought your book, listened to your podcast, read your blog, read your newsletter. You'd be completely overwhelmed the first time you ever saw that. Do you know what I mean? So I think it is easier said than done. Even coming from myself, someone who suffered from it very recently. But like you said, resilience is something that we all pretty much need to have, because something that I've said, and like when I'm talking to like other creators and other authors on things like X and Instagram, like a theme you see is that everyone goes through this, and like something I've realised is that like you need the bad times to realise that the good times are good times, because you'd have no perspective. You'd just be like, you'd be in this sort of twilight zone of what is this? You know what I mean? And that's why there's the spectrums, one end to the other. But I think you've got to put yourself out there. I think you've got to put yourself in situations what are difficult to see what you are capable of. And I think we see that a lot now, that people don't want to do that. Or you can probably go too extreme. You can probably bite off more than you can chew to start, and then be like, I knew I was right. I knew I was right that I couldn't do this. Like, if you've never stepped foot out of the house and your goal is like, I'm just going to go and run a marathon today, and then you get like 12 miles in, you're like, couldn't do it. But like, you think, I just ran 12 miles, mate, and I've never done anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's perspective, and I think that's what sort of the book is as well, and this is what this will be, is a podcast to realise that we all do it, we all have it, and the people that I aspire to, and that you aspire to, and that anyone aspires to, have failed more than we can even imagine. They've gone and done things more times, kept failing, but they've learned from that failure, and then they've succeeded, and then they've probably failed again until they've succeeded again. And like we was talking off air the other week about it, it's water erosion. Like that one drop, as long as it keeps dripping on that boulder every day, mate, eventually it's going to split it in two. And I think you've just got to, like, as corny and as bullshit as that may sound, it's so true. You've just got to have your reason why. And I think once you find that reason or that goal to sort of always revert back to, I think you can sort of channel into that then and be like, here we go. That's the drip. That's the drip. This is why I'm doing it, even if it's just 1% every day. Eventually, I want to get there, and that's where like discipline and motivation come in. You know, they definitely. I don't think you can have one without the other. I think if you're constantly motivated but don't have any discipline, like I can't tell you how many times I've listened to the song brushing my teeth at night, and I'm like, right, I'm going to go and run a 10k at 11 o'clock at night because I'm motivated by that piece of music. But you know, the day after, I'm probably like, I want to be in bed now. But that's motivation in it. But I did say of like my routine, I was disciplined to go out for a run every night at 9 o'clock, and I was lacing my boots up for going, stomp some ones and twos on the main road. That'd keep me going, even when I didn't want to do it. And I think that's why, I've spoke about that quite a lot on like my pages and stuff. But yeah, it's a journey, man. Definitely.
So the book's called Habits, Happiness and Health. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, who's the book for? Why should someone buy the book?
Especially when I was doing this course, it was like, don't write a book for everyone. Find a niche. And I was like, right, so I've sort of found a niche in health and well-being. But for me, I want it to be accessible for everybody. It's for people that are like, brand new, have no sort of, prior experience or information to it. Or it's people that, found themselves in a situation like me, where they've had that motivation before and they've sort of lost the way. It's a top-up. It's something that's there that you can read, as quickly as you want. It's not a 600-page slogathon where, you need motivation and discipline to get through it. My intention is that if you fancy doing it, you can just smash through it. Or if you want to read a little bit every day, there it is. Essentially, as selfish as this sounds, the book was written for something that I'd like, but I know that I'm not the only person that's like me, that, picks up a book and goes, 600 pages, Matt? Where am I going to find time to read 600 pages? You know what I mean? So that's why it's 95 pages long and sort of condensed into digestible chunks for people. So yeah, I think it's for people who, need a bit of insight or just a bit of a refreshment into why the habits are, rather detrimental to the health and happiness, or why it's not getting them where they want to go. Because within that book, you may read, 10 things, but there might be one thing you've never heard of. You know what I mean? Like, I could probably count on one hand how many of my pals have ever done gratitude journaling. Do you know what I mean? But if they read about it and then learn about it and they try it, that might be the one thing that changes the game for them. And that's sort of what the idea was. It was to put things in that I've tried and tested, and also that I know that other people have tried and tested and done, that I'm close to, sort of in my community and in my circle. So yeah, mate, it's sort of everything that's in here, which is a lot sometimes, just sort of put into a format that I myself would enjoy, with the knowledge of that there's a lot of people like me, and I think they'd enjoy it as well.
I mean, in terms of the brand, I feel like it's just gathering momentum now. Like, the book wasn't, although it's the biggest thing thus far, I think it's only the first step. And now we're uncovering the steps forward in terms of now the podcast, now possibly the second book. Where is this journey going, or do you know where it's going?
I've no sort of issue with saying that. I think you said before, like, sometimes people struggle to, actually find what they're doing things for in the long term. And I was definitely one of them people. I'm probably like, career-wise and stuff like that, especially because I got so transfixed on the fire and things. But then once I got taken away from me, I was sort of back to square one. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I just did something I enjoyed, and now this is this. And then, I've just got to keep turning up and putting myself in positions where I'm going to grow and learn, and then hopefully, build the brand around that, have some sort of transparency, show people that, it's corny and as cheesy as saying it's possible to do, the majority of things that you want to do. Because like I said, I'm not the most confident person with, language and writing and things. And I wrote a book. Like, if you spoke to my mum and dad and went, he's going to write a book, they would have laughed probably, and not like in a horrible way. They just know that like I'm not a fantastic writer. So, like I said to you off air, I've done the worst thing that I can do for me, like the hardest thing that I can do. So everything from here is just, it's down to me to be like, you can do it because you've done the hard thing first. So everything, it's like the snowball effect in reverse, almost. So yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited. I think because it's sort of ever growing and ever changing, and like it doesn't really have its own. There's no cookie cutter for this, I don't think, and that's sort of the exciting thing about it.
I appreciate you, mate. And thank you very much for the opportunity for doing this. If someone wanted to obviously get a hold of the book,
it's available
the
on
best place to
Amazon.
go.
You just search it in, Habits, Happiness and Health, or type my name in, Jack Mckiernan. It will come up there. My socials are Jack Mckiernan Books or J Mckiernan Books, and then for Twitter. And then if you want to head over to the website, which is www.jackmckiernan.co.uk, that's where my newsletter and all my blogs of previous newsletters, some cool stuff on there, some free resources and stuff like habit trackers and how-to guides. So yeah, man. But yeah, I appreciate you too as well, mate. Thanks for always pushing me and helping me with stuff like this, and taking your time out to host this and guide me through with your expertise.
Mate, it's been great. Obviously, having the opportunity just to talk to you and dive into it. And I don't know what it is about a podcast, but it's just because it's so concentrated conversation, it just really allows people to open up and like hear that story about the struggles in your past, and then the compound effect of these habits over time just to create this book. I mean, you really do represent that book. I said it earlier in the podcast, in terms of a business and what people are is often a reflection about who they are, and you can definitely see that here with your experiences through life. So mate, we'll call
cheers,
it there.
Man. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Take it easy.